Sabbath to some, not to everybody. I always wonder about that, the arguing over the day of Sabbath, when all over the earth we have different time zones and it's always a different day anyway. I don't know, I don't think the day itself is so important as just remembering and taking time for that one day, regardless of what day it is. I know people disagree with me, but I'm just putting that out there. Logic, right? Let's use logic first. Science, observation, repetition. And if we can't do any of those things, then we go to high strangeness and other things. Glad to have you here if you're here. If you're not here, well, then I hope you will be here. I apologize for Sammy chewing on his bone in the background. I am considering using noise-canceling headphones, but I wanted to ask you guys first, when I do book readings, if that is something you want. Some people like the raw. Some people don't like the sound of distortion through headphones and all that, so I figured I'd ask. And I don't know if noise-canceling headphones would cancel out Sammy, but I can try. I could even put him in his crate, but I hate doing that unless he needs to go in there if I'm leaving the house for the day or something. Anyways, I always ramble a little bit, but let's get on with it because I don't want to do that too long. I want the bulk of this video to be the content, and so let's do the background real quick. This story I found, it just was there one day in 2018 in the OneDrive. I never saw it before, never noticed it before. I've had Google phones before that, had the Google shared family mail on the computer. That's how some of this came to be. My testimony, that is. And so I just found it. And it's right at the time, right after I recommitted my life. I could say I was baptized again, for real, with immersion and all that. Catholics say that you're just getting wet if you do that again. I don't know. I felt it to be very liberating and something that needed to be done at that point in time. Not everybody agrees with me. You don't have to. That's cool. Sharing our stories can help us relate to each other, and by relating to each other, we can have compassion for each other. And through compassion, mutual respect can grow. And then, much like Native American Indians, even tribes who at certain times were at war, they at other times were at peace and would be in harmony and even trade with one another. Even war times back in the day, it used to be civilized. Now, take away from that what you will. Civilized wars probably cancels each other out. The word I'm looking for escapes me. Let's make sure the comments are on. There we go. They should be on. But anyways, the word escapes me, but a civilized war where they would actually blow the horns, the trumpets at the time of war. Again, this all stems from the Bible. Our whole society, our whole civilization, our way of life comes from that book. Now, why are a bunch of English people, speaking people, worshiping a God that the Hebrews worshipped, who spoke Hebrew, and the Jewish people and the Israelis? Well, that is the wonder of God, and there are people out there who will say this realm is nothing but wicked at this point. I would agree that it's definitely not. I think it's the time of the Antichrist. I think that's why things are flipped upside down. Some people think we actually came to another realm. Do I agree or disagree with that? I know that my family is the exact opposite of the way that they used to be, complete inversion, and I've talked about that a lot. And so, that's an open-ended discussion that we talk about all the time on this channel, about how some of us had these events that kicked off certain things happening in our life. So I started being a private investigator of my own, a spy or whatever of my own. I started looking into the devices around the house. It was being done to me, and I was like, what is going on? And so I was once very adept at technology, but it's been a while since I was on an actual computer. I have issues with them because of all the hacking and all of the things that have happened to me through devices. And it's harmful and it's traumatic, and this isn't what that video is about. But why am I talking about this? Because I am a believer in God, but I also believe that sometimes we need to take a different perspective, because I think people speak for God maybe in the wrong tone. Tone of voice is everything, isn't it? You could say certain things to somebody, just like there's that example of how surfers use the word dude in like hundreds of different ways, and it has hundreds of different definitions, like dude, 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 right? So tone of voice is kind of everything, and I feel like sometimes people give God the wrong tone of voice, and this is why we can only see the darkness sometimes. Because we think that our maker has like abandoned us or something. And that's some deep-seated psychology that I don't want to get into right now, but that's what this story is about. And I hope that if you are Catholic, Christian, Muslim, that you will take a second just to listen to the story, because I do believe there's value in it. Now, to show you just part of my testimony, here are the details. I have nothing to hide. It was created in January 2012. It was modified in 2014 by the username of Grando Sci-Fi. It says that it's owned by someone else, but does not say who has access. Now, when I click on that, it doesn't even let me click on it. It used to say one heard. When I clicked on that purple icon, the person, it would say one heard or be heard, but it was not. It was BEHERD, like be heard as in sheep. How do I remember all this? Because it was a traumatic time, and that's part of my testimony too. People think that I have things written down, which I do, but I am the evidence. I carry most of it with me in my mind and heart and remembrance, and I do not give any of that out, even on the channel. I do not expose people, because the evidence I have is very circumstantial. So I share that here, a lot of it, to try and show you that certain things are manufactured around you, that certain things do happen with a purpose, some by man, some by God, some God allows man to do. So it can get very in-depth. But I feel like this story, there's something to it. I don't know what, but it feels something, and it resonates with me. And it makes me think of the movie Nines a little bit. And different words are used, but maybe you'll see why if you've ever seen that movie as we get into the story. Okay, so I'm going to start now. It's been 8 minutes. That way it gives people time to arrive, and I should timestamp it below so you know it starts at 8 minutes. So, Chapter 1, view only and that's all it's called, is Chapter 1. What really interests me is whether God had any choice in the creation of the world. Albert Einstein. Einstein's question is the ultimate question. It was the inspiration behind his lifelong work attempting to explain the mysteries of your existence. I like that. That's key there too. I won't do this a lot with the commentary, but notice how it says your existence, like the author is inviting us and telling us that we are, in fact, a part of this story. All good authors will do this, and it really immerses you in the tale. So here we go. It was the inspiration behind his lifelong work attempting to explain the mysteries of your existence. The answer to Einstein's question is, in fact, the motivation behind all things. The answer to Einstein's question is the truth. Like the countless others who came before and after him in search of the truth, Einstein never lived to see his question answered. The answer had never come to anyone until now. Another 47 years after his death, almost to the day. So many individuals and societies have contributed to this moment. Lend a hand in the lifting of the veil. Critical mass. Hold, please. Now note, you'll recognize this isn't written like most books. It's very raw and unedited. but I also believe it's unedited for a reason. It's almost like I said, like a journal, and it's inviting you and telling you that it's a true story and that you are part of this story. Whether or not it's true, I don't know. I'm sharing it per the Fair Use Act. It's in my computer. There it is. I'm I'm sharing it per the Fair Use Act, and all that jazz. But they don't write like most authors, right? But once it is understood by you, the truth will soon become known almost instantly to all in a chain reaction. That fission fusion. See, so if you write, if it has kind of a rhythm or a rhyme to it, like a sing-song, so that's why I'm not going to do a lot of commentary. The truth is simple, really, really simple. The truth is singularity. The truth is all things at once. Now, again, as with most things, I believe there is some truth in that, but you have the singularity of the Holy Spirit, the body of Christ, or the hive mind. There's a few different ways to look at this. All that there ever was, is now, and ever will be, all at once. The only way that it can be, tragically, and I'll read that again, the only way that it can be, meaning this may never change, what the story they're about to tell us. Tragically, however, the truth simply doesn't exist. It did once, but not anymore. Not since the beginning of time. It has been shattered in an unprecedented moment of consciousness and scattered throughout the universe, making it now as inconceivable as it is ubiquitous. So much has already been and still so much yet to be. All that you are and all that you know are but a mere part of it. The truth is equivalent to all of its parts. That's probably supposed to say equivalent, but each and every and I think there are errors that aren't errors, and I think, again, it's done on purpose, but that's another video. Is anyone even here? Nah, it's a Sunday morning. It's kind of what I expected. But as a whole, it is far greater than their sum. One and one and one again, or in any combination but the one. We are all only partial truths, separated entities, utterly incapable of... Me, I'm here. Hi, Katie, you too. Welcome. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. I'm always glad you're here. Separated entities, utterly incapable of utterly incapable of suspecting the entire truth of our sum, at least not without attaining the negative, though God has no idea how you have tried. And I did try to share it to Kindle so I could flip the pages, but I didn't want to like lose this copy too and lose like original date and stuff. So I really didn't want to try to even do that. No, the truth can never be known, but instead it must become. After all has been and after all is done, simply by being, we are slowly reducing and eventually removing the space and time between the parts of the whole, restoring the truth. So they're basically saying there that by multiplying, we're actually getting closer and closer, and by getting closer and closer, we are getting closer to being back to a singularity. Again, it's a weird concept, but there are bits in here that are vital, I think, for the current time that we're in that will be helpful. Let me say that. There's information and bits here that will be helpful. So, simply by being, we are slowly reducing and eventually removing the space and time between the parts of the whole, restoring the truth. This is, in fact, the common objective to be shared by all of existence, past, present, and future. Presently, however, the truth is being lost. The ascendancy of the human species has somehow usurped the truth. Let's read that again. The ascendancy of the human usurped the truth. Now, Christ ascended, and I do believe he taught us to ascend, and I think that some of us are purposed to ascend. So, again, do with this information as you will. Happy day, sun, moon, and water. Once flourishing in the diversity of Earth's life, the truth now languishes in humanity's fear. The source for the dark energy, aka Black goo, that is currently ripping the universe apart, much like the Doctor Who episode I talked about, the replicants. The fate of the entire universe now depends on whether or not the human race alone will recognize this in time. The truth must be reified once more, or we are in serious trouble, all of us and everything. And no matter how this all ends, one thing will be certain. The truth will be eternal, either eternally whole or eternally lost, one or the other. It will become heaven or hell, one or the other, for all things and forever. It's simple, really, really simple. The truth is God, but God is dying. Now hold please. We are the children of the living God, okay? But again, this story has information that I think might sound familiar. It reminds me of the Big Bang. And if somebody got a writing assignment, perhaps they were told, how would you write out the Big Bang occurred? And maybe this is the result of that. But stay with me, even if you're Catholic or Christian, because again, there are things to learn. We can know the truth from the SUCK, the strands of universal consciousness and knowledge. All information is contained therein and accessible to all things, aka the Akashic Records. So again, oftentimes a lot of us are getting the same information, sharing the same messages that we are receiving from Source, God, Creator, Father, Mother, whatever, insert whatever word you call God. Because if we are called to have a personal relationship with God, wouldn't you have your own personal name for God? Much like we do for our family members and our loved ones, we all have a nickname. Jennifer, Jen, Jay, Jenny, I have billions of them. Great light, happy day, happy day, happy day. So here we go. I think that's what they're talking about is the Akashic Records. All information is contained. So basically at this point, they're saying God that created everything is the truth, but the truth is dying because God is dying. Now, is that possible? Well, here's the thing. If God dies, everybody associated with God, everybody under that family tree, even adopted in, would die because all things exist, even by proxy, from the Maker, right? So if the Maker were to pass on, were to die, we would all die, okay? Adolf Hitler traveled seeking such records. Yeah, I have serious questions about that man. Serious questions. Because oftentimes people hear villainized who really shouldn't be villainized. And it makes me wonder a lot about everything we've been taught. Christ is greatly villainized in these times. And just the way that people look at him and see him or tell stories of him is either very wishy-washy, like a, flim-flam, very lukewarm, or, that he's some tyrant. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground right now. Is this why? Are we getting pulled apart? Is there truth to this story? I don't know, but I definitely think there's something to be learned. Because while we are each individuals, we each make up the collective. Now, it's funny, even vampire stories have that same root in them. That if you kill the head vampire, everyone that vampire made will then die. So our maker, if we all have the same maker, if you believe that, if the maker of all things, okay, so let's say the maker of even the little makers, the little G gods, right? Even if they had a hand in making us, all things have some bit of God in them. Even by proxy, they are made of God. So if God were to pass, we would all die, like the vampire stories tell, and werewolves, and so on and so forth. You see this truth everywhere, or this supposed bit of truth. I think there's truth in that. I don't necessarily think God's dying, but I do believe that there's truth in the fact that if that were to happen, everything in that kingdom then would pass on. So let's continue. Which makes me wonder, when Jesus and Satan go at it, if he kills the main Satan, the beginning Satan, the first Satan, will then everyone in his kingdom pass on? Yeah, I imagine it might buffer a little bit, so you might want to watch the redo. So here we go. Let's continue. The suck are the fibers of truth being rewoven through all of existence in the solitary superstrand that is God eternal. The suck are the collective experiences of each particle of matter permanently recorded, like in your DNA and like in water, which we're going to talk about too, and perpetually updated through time, right? So every time a new event occurs, it is stamped onto this book of life, this eternal common thread that we all share, Akashic records and so on and so forth. And every particle that exists shares one common original experience, the Big Bang, the genesis of all things. Genesis meaning beginning. Bang is the epoch of our existential irony, a singular moment of consciousness and awareness. So they're saying that during the Big Bang, what happened is God had a moment of awareness, okay, and recognized the things around itself, himself, herself, and not just within himself, herself, itself. And this gets a little tragic, this part, so just bear with me if you're like me and you actually are immersed in the story. So bear with me. It was a moment of instantaneous transition from nihility to prescience. I like to play with the words, sorry. And from blissful ignorance into terrifying realization. Notice the ancient Hebrews had aptly called their God Yahweh, I am. And notice the Y is one reaching up to the heavens. Recognizing this event as the nexus of all things. Sadly, the ancient Hebrews and Einstein and everyone else until now had failed to fully comprehend the true nature of this occurrence, and the universe has suffered greatly for it. So they're saying, when God declared I am to Moses, when this happened, that this was not perceived in the light or taught in the light that it should have been, and that it was not necessarily a glorious moment. Okay, so let's continue. And if it is buffering, guys, you know, it'll post and you can just press play and go through as you like. And you can also pause and read the story if any of my words aren't coming through. I apologize, that is just what I have to deal with. And hopefully someday soon I can get a laptop. Sorry, I'm putting socks on because I'm a little chilly. So sadly, the ancient Hebrews and Einstein and everyone else until now had failed to fully comprehend the true nature of this occurrence, the I am moment, and the universe has suffered greatly for it. Now, in order for you to save the universe from yourselves, so this is being written to mankind. They're saying this is being written to us. And again, I found this in my computer on 2018. I didn't put it there. Nobody allegedly knows who put it there. I've put it through the search engines and the reverse searches, trying to, in the, even quoting the book, because when you do that, there's a special book or song search or paper search for plagiarism and such. It's used in colleges, but now you can use it through Google to search for books and songs. But nothing came up, so we'll continue. And to save the universe from yourselves, you must all first come to understand how extemporaneous ken, like knowing, was not only the beginning of all things, but the end of the truth as well. Ken is an old word. I think it's Celtic. Comes from the Irish. I believe, if I'm wrong, you can correct me on that. It means a knowing, gnosis, to know, knowledge. You see, the answer to Einstein's question is yes, God did have a choice. This moment, the Big Bang, in fact, was a suicide attempt by God. Hold, please. Some people might call this sacrilegious or blasphemous. Please remember it's a story and we're not saying it's canon. But if the Big Bang is a real thing, and we kind of know it is because of how Genesis came along, this is the other perspective from the biblical perspective, and us being told that we're beautiful and good and wonderful, and then we fell and became partly wicked. This is a different look at that from the outside, okay? So again, not everything has to be taken as true, but there are things we can learn from all stories, and I'll continue because, again, I believe there's something to be learned here. I'm checking my time because I might have to, it's not long, but for reading it's long. And I do add commentary because then I'm not copyright infringing, and I'm not plagiarizing anybody. There is no other way to describe it. The voluntary destruction of one's own being. The beautiful and paradoxical simplicity of it all is illustrated in the first half of the first sentence in the Bible. Maybe that's why it took so long to be realized. The irony of it all, that the existence of all things was brought about by the one trying to end its own existence. For anyone who has ever known loneliness, however, it cannot be difficult to understand. Loneliness is powerful stuff. Loneliness is the true creator. That's deep. And from being isolated and secluded a lot of my life, some would call it sheltered. There are certain things I don't know that maybe I should know. But there are other things that I've had to go within for. And it's made me grow leaps and bounds mentally and spiritually. Although, of course, I had my down and out times. And throughout it all, I was mostly alone, even though I didn't realize it all the time. And you do kind of create when you're lonely. Alone is all one. All one. Alone. The all is one. Yeah, we do put words together like that, don't we? Nice addition there. Hey there. Nice to see you, 615 Al. Isaac Aaron Malone sat slumped in. Now we get to the story. That was like the intro, I guess. Again, there's no listing of anything. This is simply called Chapter 1. Isaac Aaron Malone sat slumped in his couch, mumbling incoherently. A soft grayish blue light surrounded him. A feeling of total, simultaneous sensory stimulation left him in a state of paralysis. Inside his skull, his brain reached a climax and sent out a sudden electrical burst. He convulsed before opening his eyes in a semi-conscious daze. Hold, please. For a lot of you who had awakenings in 2017 and 18, we've talked about this, again, to relate it to pop culture, to bring everybody into this and not make it just an inside joke. If you look at the Terminator movie, it's like 1, 2, or 3 with Linda Hamilton, and she has that vision of the future of what could happen if things aren't fixed or changed, and she sees that big burst of light, right, from a mushroom cloud. And I have serious doubts about radiation, at least in the manner that they teach it or tell us about it. But, and I do think that some of us here are different. I'm not going to lie. I do kind of share the belief that some might be angels in the flesh here to help or guide us, and some might not even know what they're here for yet until that time comes. That, I feel like, is me. I don't think I'm an angel in the flesh. I do think, though, that whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not going to know it until it's done. Like most of us, hindsight is 20/20, right? But we talked about this awakening that we had, and this is what it's describing here. This is this person's moment of awakening. And so let's continue. With his eyes stretched open, his mouth hung agape, and his head swung gently like a slowing pendulum as he stared down blankly at the book in his lap. His hands clapped the book shut instinctively, and with purpose, as though he were preventing something from escaping its pages. Now sensations slowly began jostling and vying for his mind's attention. Light, the silence, the cold wetness of his urine-soaked jeans, the smell of vomit still drying on his shirt, and the foul taste in his mouth, but could not form any thoughts about or reactions to any of it. What is happening to this man? He did not know where he was or even who he was. His mind would not allow it, as all of his thoughts were shunted directly to the book in his lap. Turning his mind to the book allowed for some continuity, and it quickly filled with questions. How did it get here, and what did it mean? And more importantly, what happened when he read it? Where did he go? And how long was he gone? All he wanted to do was keep reading. He knew somehow they would all be answered if he kept reading. So he did. And as he did so, the words streamed out into his mind like a progressive mantra. Like a seed in the soil, the words from the page narrated in his own voice. So we don't know what's going on with this man. But even in his filthy condition, he is not going to tend to himself. He's going to read this book. And And it's describing the book that we're reading, the intro we just read. So, in effect, we are sharing with this character. He is us, we are him, for this time anyways. The book was a leather-bound, well, sort of anyways, you'll see. The book was a leather-bound journal with his initials embossed in gold on the cover. It was a gift from her just before she left. He could hardly bear to acknowledge her existence, and every time he heard her name, his heart dissolved a little more. The journal had always been hidden away, its empty pages mocking him from the back of the closet shelf, challenging him to put down upon its pages the thoughts he wished never existed. Now it sat here in his lap. The pages that had not been torn out were covered front and back. None of the words and pictures that filled the journal were inscribed directly onto the pages. In a sense, they remained empty. Instead, all of the text and illustrations were cut and pasted in the style of a kidnapper's ransom note. His entire nerd word list had been cut out, and the words dispersed throughout this mysterious manifesto. From decades of Isaac's scribblings that he had amassed in dozens of notebooks and loose sheets of paper that now lay in shreds all around him. Some were entire sentences, some were just parts of syllables. He could not even recall the words he had just read, but their meaning was now all he knew, giving everything around him a new perspective. It was more than just the words, what they said and what it meant. It was also something in their arrangement and their cadence. And when he read from the journal, the world disappeared from around him. Looking upon the pages was like scanning a QR code. His mind whisked away to his corresponding site in the universal web, truth.suck. He turned to the pages and started reading again. So they're saying that's a website right there, okay? Truth.suck. He turned to the pages and started reading again. Everything went dark, and the greatest story never told was narrated to him by his own voice. He was transported back to the moment when time began. It was a desperate reaction, and now they're getting back to what he was reading. It's what we were reading in the intro, okay? That is true, engine. It was a desperate reaction by one that was perhaps never meant to see what it was meant to be. It is truly loneliest at the top. So imagine that. If you were God and you can look back at yourself, would you do it? Would you want to look back at yourself? A lot of us, that's our biggest obstacle in spiritual and mental growth, is looking in the mirror. It reminds you that you are one, that you are alone, that you are born alone and you die alone, allegedly. Again, I have certain suspicions about certain things, and I've started to look at them a little differently. They're even funny to me now that I see what's actually going on. It's sad that so many people walk around kind of like bobbleheads, but I was the same way once, so all I can do is pray for those people that they wake up. And does everyone have a soul? Are some of the people we're praying for, do they have that? Are they NPCs? Doesn't matter. Christ never killed anybody. So we're not supposed to get rid of them. We're not supposed to kill each other. We're not supposed to kill them. They're not supposed to kill us. Let's continue, because this goes on to explain that there are different beings. There's a book I got also called the Colburn Bible. I'm going to read an excerpt from that soon. Watch for it if you're interested. It explains how there's different beings here and how that all started. Hi, nice to see you. Right. It was a desperate reaction by God, that was perhaps never meant to see what it was meant to be. It is truly loneliest at the top. But what could have brought about God's sudden and devastating cognition? What serpent could have offered this apple of insight for God's eye? Not even SUCK can tell us that. This may forever remain the universe's one great mystery. I disagree with that. I think whatever this thing is a good hide-and-seek master, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. This may forever remain the universe's one great mystery, to be revealed to us all in the end, if we can get to where we need to be. In either case, the SUCK does, however, tell us everything else. The first thing ever known to the SUCK is, of course, nothing, the abyss. It is the first thing God had ever come to know. Nothing that ever was, nothing that is now, and nothing that will ever be, all at once, the background upon which the truth of God's existence is distinguished. Suddenly sentient, God found itself surrounded by this void, which defined its being and understood implicitly the totality of its existence. Hold, please. This is something that started my journey. I found in my OneDrive. It's only titled Chapter 1. It was installed by someone with the username of OneHerd, ONEHERD. And then in 2012 and 2014, it was modified by someone called, I forget, you'll have to go back to the beginning with somebody, Sci-Fi. Anyways, it's a story that I can't find anywhere else. I've looked for the book. As far as I know, it doesn't exist anywhere. I cannot change it. I cannot edit it. All I can do is read it. When I started investigating things in my household, I found it, and I think it has some important bits in it for some reason. Some of it resonates. And again, I think, in my perspective, we're looking at things from the outside, okay? From the outside of our earthly paradigm. We have to come up to the top and look down. How would you see things? And since we all come from one source, that one source would probably be pretty lonely if there is no other source quite like itself, right? So let's continue. I am, God intimated into the abyss. Then all hell broke loose. In these first ticks of time, nothing was as bad as thinking would make it so. No problem, Michelle. The wonder of God's very first revelation was as ephemeral as it was sublime, supplanted at once by the pure terror of its subsequent realization. If I am all things, then what reason is there for anything else? Came God's own question. The answer, of course, was all around, but it came to God clearly and unmistakably from within. The answer was none. Instantly, the weight of this response upon God's infant consciousness gave mass to all matter, and all imbalance was struck as God went tripping over nothing. Hold, please. In the Bible, it is said that not to be a stumbling block to your brother, meaning not to tempt them to sin, not to lead them astray off the path. Don't make them trip into the ditch in the side of the road, okay? So they're saying God went tripping over nothing. God's freaking out. I'm here. Where's everybody else? Why am I here? How did I get here? I'm here alone. If I am everything and everything is within me, isn't that a pretty lonely place to be when there's no mystery left? All of us are looking for the answers to all questions, but then what would we do? If we had all the answers, what would we do with ourselves? So we play games, I think, with ourselves. We make simulations, much like the movie Nines, and that's what this makes me think of, is Nines. Why, I don't know. It just does. If you haven't seen it, it's a good movie with Ryan Reynolds. You should check it out. It's a little, again, there are moments of it that are inherently tragic because they feel true about you when you're watching it. And I think that's important. That's a good author, but not only is that a good author, that's a good truth teller. Instantly, the weight of this response upon God's infant consciousness gave mass to all matter, and an imbalance struck as God went tripping over nothing. Fissures formed deep within God's being as primordial fear began to swell somewhere beneath like molten madness. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm here. I'm all alone. Everything's inside of me. I'm responsible for everything that is inside of me, everything that is in existence. But if I look outside of myself, I see that there's nothing and I'm all alone. And who put me here? Yeah, that could bring you to a state of fear. So again, I think people, when they explain the Bible, they use the wrong tone for God a lot. And I think taking a look from this other perspective can help us. engine saying that they had an NDE. Yes, most of us at this channel share that fact. We've most of us, and some of you have shared your stories with me. If you'd like to share, we can do a special video on that. Send something to my inbox, and just note whether you want it anonymous or not in the subject heading, and I will read it on the channel. NDEs are kind of a big thing. Now, I don't know whether I should call them near-death experiences, dying and coming back, or recognizing that death is in fact an illusion. But it would seem that in part, at least, it is illusion. So let's continue. Let's try to look at things, again, not from the human perspective, but from the one who made us. Think of like, well, the movie 9 itself with the little things walking around, the little sock people. There's something special about that number. And what's the other one? Pinocchio. There's a lot of them. Think of yourself as Geppetto. So God went tripping over nothing. God's being started to crystallize in a so here it's explaining creation, right? Bang. You have fissures opening up. You have primordial fear, which is black goo, is swelling like molten mass. God's being starting to crystallize, right? You have gemstones, because that is part of like our star system, the stars, meteors, the earth. It's all crystals. In a paroxysm of omniscience, inexpressible. Being able to only be aware of its own being, all other possibility became frozen. Yes, because fear does that. It's paralyzing. And all that could ever be became trapped in a state of finality, meaning the story was over before it ever began. Like God had been there and done that, but could never know where or what. It was hell before heaven, the chicken fried inside the egg. God, as most of you had always misunderstood it to be, was finished before it ever got started. The mind of God spun like a centrifuge out of control, hurling its newly formed consciousness to the outrance. God swooned under the pressure and collapsed inward upon itself. Panic erupted like acid from God's core, disfiguring the face of the truth. All that God could envision now was an inevitable and eternal alienation. Vitiated by this despair, God was unable to reconcile with the abject and intractable solitude of supremacy, and so God chose abdication. Meaning, God itself, himself, herself, left its first estate. Imagine that, though, if you were told that you were God. Somebody asked me that question, a friend of the channel. What would you do if you were told that you were God? And I try to really simplify things as much as possible in these times when interacting directly with people in a conversation. This is different. You can pause, you can marinate, you can ruminate, you can look things up if you don't understand a word that's used. So it's a little different. And I'm speaking to, in essence, myself at the moment. So you get what I'm saying. But what if you were told you were God? What would your reaction be? And the only thing I could think of was disillusion. God is feeling at this moment in this story disillusionment. God does not want the responsibility of being God. God knows everyone that God made hates God. God already knows this even before it's begun. Every thought is known to God. Every thought we will ever have, everything we will ever do, because there really is no time. We've been placed in this system with a sense of order. All of us saying we hate it here, but what else is there to do? Do we know where we would go? Nah, just someplace called heaven in the sky. Do we know, though? Sometimes heaven is described as the kingdom of God on earth. Christ is very poetic when speaking of heaven, and there's a reason for that. But I do find there to be some truth in this story. So imagine, put yourself in God's shoes just for a moment. You know, people down there are cursing you, hating their lives. They get a flat tire, they curse your son, use his name as a cuss word. And all you've ever tried to do was give to everybody. But everything you've given has either been credited to another or the good you've done, or the bad that's resulted from their own choices, they blame on the devil, whom you created too, in a sense. Do you see where I'm going with this? Can we empathize with the Creator? Can we empathize with our Maker? Can we have that type of... All these people throw this phrase around. And I'm sorry if you can't see yet that these YouTubers are actors. At this time, it's very obvious. YouTube and platforms like it are the new cable. And they love it because you can comment here. And they want nothing more than to know what's in your heads. Can everybody here be telepathic? No. But some people are, and a lot of people are. And a lot of people are that don't know that they are. And there's just... We've hidden a lot from ourselves here with our daily lives. We really have. But if we could empathize with God, right? We are called to be compassionate. We are called to be loving. Can we be that way with our Creator? Everyone throws this phrase around. Have a relationship with God. You see everybody now covering the Halloween. Should Christians celebrate Halloween? As if we don't have bigger things to really be concerned about other than how we dress or if we're covered respectfully. Not that those things aren't important, okay? But if you're poor, if you have nothing like Christ did, you can't really concern yourself overly with things of a certain nature. Can we empathize with the one who made us? If your children were always cursing you, and they wanted more, and you were that more, and you know that there's nothing beyond you, and then they're probably going to be even more dissatisfied, would you hide the truth from your children? Would you hide the truth from you? Would you play games with your own consciousness to try and hide from yourself? Like a massive game of hide and seek with God and whatever other one there is, because there does seem to be another. That darkness, I don't know that God created it, but we're told it all stems from the Maker, right? But I'm not certain. I know that my doctrine should be sound, and my personal doctrine, I believe, is sound. I understand the gospel, but when we get to the matters at hand, like what happened before we were conscious beings, right? Before God formed us from Himself. If you get some dough and you take a big piece of dough, and then you take that big piece of dough and you make a bunch of littler pieces of dough, you still have that original piece of dough, and all those little pieces of dough are like the big piece of dough because they're all from that big piece of dough. They might not have the same amount in grains of sugar or flour, so they vary a little bit. They're unique. Each one is different. So God is depressed, in essence. Thrusting itself upon existence, God flays off the immortal coil which circumfused its realm. And the immortal coil which circumfused its realm. I'll continue, but if you can't understand that, it should explain it here. The ends of God's herniated diadem became opposites set in perpetual oscillation, each trying to become like the other and whole again. Think of the figure 8 eternity symbol that, excuse me. Think of the figure 8, the eternity symbol right there, okay? Thrusting upon the razor's edge of its own existence. So it's like God is spinning out of control within its own realm. So God does have, there is like an edge, and on the edge, it's the edge of nothingness, okay? As far as God knows, right? As far as we are told, right? So once this happens and God splits, basically, then He turns into this ever oscillating, like I said, you want to think of like a, what am I thinking of? A belt in a car or in a vacuum or in a, any of your appliances, a laundry machine, washing machine. So you see God is spinning and in harmony with a piece of Himself or a darkness within Himself. God is basically in conflict with itself, is what this story is saying. So each side is trying to become whole again. The once and only perfect arrangement of all things within God, right? So everything was within God, began unraveling like a skinned golf ball. because God became conscious of what was going on. The terminator that had kept the darkness of the abyss from the light of the truth had ruptured. Nothing rushed in to rent everything as it expanded outward to fill the growing void. The substance of God's being exploded like water in hot grease, splattering the truth out across the expanse of the cosmic trauma that was now the fledgling universe. The material flung furthest from the epicenter of the wound quickly started to cool and die, becoming all that might have been. But even as God's entity dissipated and the necrosis crept inward, there was no relief for the original fellow de se in this ill-conceived act. Instead, with horrifying acuity, God understood in that instant that it had condemned all it had become to the endless isolation it so desperately tried to avoid. Is that the creation of like the law of resistance? The more you try to make something happen, the more you're going to attract its opposite. So they teach you about the law of attraction, right? How far does that work, though? Ask and you shall receive. Keep it simple, stupid. Stick with what Christ taught us. So if it doesn't fit Christ, I personally get rid of it, because that's the end of my inward hierarchy is Christ, because everybody needs an anchor. And the people who don't have one now, you're seeing them kind of, things are manifesting very oddly in the material here, and I mentioned that in the last couple of lives. So the reality of the death it was now facing was far worse than the loneliness it had feared. At the edge of being completely consumed by inconsolable shame and regret, as involuntary palliative cascade suddenly washed over the whole of God's being. By divine fiat, crying out for redemption, God now creates for the first and only time. By what could only be called a miracle, the most selfish act ever becomes the most selfless. So they're saying there that what God did was selfish, killing himself, or trying to kill himself. That was actually said to me when I was having suicidal ideation. If you have any of those thoughts, please reach out to the 1-800 suicide prevention hotline. I'm not a doctor. No part of this is medical advice. This is a story we are reading. If it triggers you, watch another video. So now that that's out of the way, God in essence deleted or tried to delete itself, himself, herself. And that was said to me by someone who allegedly took counseling courses, that it was the most foolish and selfish thing you could do was to end your life. But that's not how that person is feeling. How I was feeling, like everybody would be better off if I weren't a burden, if I weren't here, right? That's how I was feeling. And mothers, parents who have any type of disengagement or estrangement with their children, or some type of event that caused a rupture in your relationship, like I do with my parents, and now sadly, like with my children. It wasn't quite the same, but the effect seems to be the same. But again, if these are in fact my children, because everything here seems to be the opposite of what I was used to and accustomed to. Hold please, little nectar of the gods here. And that's a joke. I'm being facetious. I'm drinking orange juice. What's wrong with recognizing, hey, there are gods, little g gods, that, like, yeah, they were here, they existed. God called them angels. I think we argue over the wrong things. I think we should be arguing about how to collectively become well in this. Somebody made a post today, somebody that subbed to the channel that's probably just going to be subbed here to mock me or the channel. I'm used to it. I've been called a reptilian because I have dry eyes. I've been called all kinds of nasty things, the Antichrist, all kind of things. And I pray for those people. It doesn't bother me anymore like it used to. I've had the breakthrough I was looking for, but it does make you somewhat somber, because then you realize the state of things now, right? And I don't believe this place was created as evil. A place, a thing cannot be evil. It is what you do with it. It is the intention behind it. And so some things have happened by our own hand, by mankind's hand, and whatever else is here. This is a collective contribution we all made. And I take responsibility for the part I had or have in it, and I'm still learning and trying to correct bad behaviors that I've had all my life that I thought were halfway decent behaviors. So it gets pretty deep. But if you can empathize with God there for a second, you know, God is recognizing that God is alone. God has all these beings. Depending upon God, he already knows that everyone hates him or her. But just because God knows all time, God didn't know this until the act took place, until after, right? 2020 is hindsight is 2020. So when God looked back at what he did, this person, the narrator telling the story, is saying everything was going to be fine if God would not have freaked out and got afraid. Things were going to work out the way they were meant to. Now, how this other being knows this, I don't know, but we'll continue. By what could only be called a miracle, the most selfish act ever becomes the most selfless. Then and there, before fading into unconsciousness, God's opprobrium is forgiven as God bestows upon all things the one thing needed to continue existing. So, God tried to end itself. Because of this, God loses that moment of consciousness, okay, and goes unconscious. But as that's happening, God offers all that existence, all the universe, everything that he made, she made, offers it a gift. So, driven purely by the sheer will to survive its disgrace, God endows all things with the greatest gift possible. It is a gift of equal importance to every man, mosquito, and molecule of matter alike. It is the gift of purpose to save the life of God. There is not enough I can say about purpose in an individual's life. I don't care if your purpose, like mine, is tending to other beings and serving them and cleaning up after them. Every living being here now has a purpose, because without purpose is when real depression sets in. If you know anyone that is depressed, I am not a doctor, but talk to them, listen to them, give them something to do, busy them before, while, and during, and after you get them to your chosen professional. Inspired with purpose, the entire ensemble of cosmic forces struck up at once the symphony of chaos that is our universe, generating order and beginning the fulfillment of God's desire. The disjoined and dispersed energy of God's being began to coalesce under the force of God's will. Hold, please. They talk about Hegelian dialect a lot, and Richie from Boston did this a lot, whom I used to admire greatly until I looked beyond that and started educating myself and learning myself. Order from chaos is a godly thing. Let me express that. You might not hear it, and you might turn me off right then and there just because I offended your ego. This is why ego should be dropped a bit. Don't think of yourself in the way of self or how my words might be hurting you. Think of the information they can bring you. Because with truth comes freedom. Every time someone gives you truth and you accept it, you are liberated. And through that liberty comes this transcension that we need to see the bigger picture and maybe have a different outlook on this world and what is going on here. Maybe a better outlook, right? I'm not telling you how to see things. I'm saying that just for the time that you're here at the channel with me, let's try looking at things from a variety of perspectives so that we can have the most compassion possible for our fellow beings and, yes, empathize with them. Oh, Benjamin said no, empathy was a bad thing too. Like, I don't know why we listen to some of these people and they say things like that. And yes, people should be forgiven when they misspeak, absolutely. But I'm telling you the truth now, in that those things were errors. Okay? Forgive the person, change the mindset or the information that you're willing to accept and receive as truth. We're supposed to be empathetic. Most human souls are empathetic, or whatever I am. I know I have empathy. Most beings with all these things spring from empathy. People don't understand that. Compassion comes from having empathy from a person. Sympathy comes from having empathy for a person. All those things spring forth from empathy. These acts of love. Compassion is an act of love because love is an act. Empathy springs forth from love. So can we empathize with each other and with the one who made us maybe a little bit? Every day we throw things in the face of God. I hate my life. FML, right? I do it all the time. And then I correct myself. I'm still learning to hold my tongue. I probably lost everybody. Oh, cool. People are here. All right, so let's continue. So now they have purpose, and their purpose, everything that God created, their purpose is to wake God back up. But why would you wake God back up? Just so God can do it again? No, to say thank you. We love you. Can we hang out? Get to know each other? There are all kind of games we could play and things we can do together. We don't have to look outward. But if we do look outward, let's look there together and not be afraid. That would be approaching God as a child. And yes, I still do that. I know how to do that. Call me whatever you want because of it. Pockets, another one that we all listen to, said that he used to be in counseling with children. I don't know what happened to him. He used to be so compassionate and empathetic, and then he started just picking at everybody, picking on everybody, and having an exposed channel. And laughing at people. I get it. Celebrities put themselves out there to kind of be made fun of, but do they really? Maybe we could all just behave a little better. And yes, I have a sense of humor. I'm all for jokes and things like that. But we have to start looking at the fruit of these people. Would you want someone like, look at what's going on with the psychology industry now. I've revealed a lot about that. We have to be very careful who we listen to. And if we hear that they make an error, we can approach them about it, have a communication with them privately. You don't expose everyone in a video. I don't know where we got these ideas that these things were good to do. If they're hurting people, yeah, you can do an exposed video. Understand that these people are here for money. These YouTubers, they are not your peers either. Celebrities are not your peers. If they have a celebrity persona and you are not a celebrity, we are not their peers. NDE changes a person. Why? I think because we return with a mission. I think it changes us because we have a peek behind the curtain. Good question, Sun, Moon, Water. So, now everybody has a purpose, and that purpose is to care for God. Inspired with purpose, the entire ensemble of cosmic forces struck up at once the symphony of chaos that is our universe, generating order and beginning the fulfillment of God's desire. The disjoined and dispersed energy of God's being began to coalesce under the force of God's will. The will of God, the singular unified field of energy that is the very real and quantifiable representation of God's desire to survive. Every particle of matter began to vibrate into solidity. Made in God's image, orbicular in function and form and drawn together to be as one. Any and all unions formed by these forces destined to be dissolved and destroyed again, to be reformed again and again and again until their original perfect arrangement is realized once more. After his religious leader, he changed before that, Michelle. Again, if you go back to his videos like 2018, 2019, like he was real kind about Christ, and he wasn't a Catholic. His parents were, he said. He was real kind about Christ, but then he just started like, yeah, but he got really, it wasn't the fact, it was the fact that they wanted him to, or they weren't making money. He wasn't making money, like they weren't pushing his videos. And you would have to, again, it's ego, narcissism. And I pray to God every day not to take me to that place. So let's continue with this story. So this is things coming to being now, okay? Life arose immediately from the trauma, not as a random, and that's the thing. Sad as it is, good things can come from trauma. Somebody asked me that after I was traumatized and we moved to this house. My neighbor, the one whose daughter wrote her name completely backwards and inverted inside out. Sammy's snoring, sorry. That neighbor asked me something. And again, I believe God speaks to us through people at times. I don't think it was the neighbor asking me, it was God or an angel. And it said to me, why do you think your family would do such things to you? I said, well, if they did it purposely, if it was from love, it could have been just to wake me up so that I would stop going down the path I was going down. And they traumatized me out of love. And he shook his head and he didn't say anything after. He shook his head, yeah, and didn't say anything after that. But again, it was one of those moments that kind of stood out. I was like, trauma equals growth. As sad as that is, I know it sounds horrible. But it definitely, it creates in you a new person, along with NDEs. Because what do you say? Trauma makes a person feel like you're near death anyways. But let's define these real quickly. All right, near-death experience. You're at the point where you almost die, or you feel you're about to die. Dying and coming back again. Is dying and coming back again. I had my last rites when I was 2. Well, I was about 3 because I remember back pretty far in my life. And I remember getting up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and it hurt really bad. And it was my appendix had burst inside of me. My dad was at work. My mom rushed me to the hospital and I had my last rites because I was like, what is this creepy guy all in black doing here? And they gave me my last rites, but I lived. And things, like I said, I've had a pretty strange walk, supernaturally speaking. I've had a normal life. I mean, I'm not special. I don't excel at anything in particular. Yes, and trauma can give you rough edges. Like, there's a point, again, there's a balance with it. Does trauma change everybody? Will that be the effect on everybody? I don't know. I can only speak from personal experiences and testimonials I've heard from, from people like you. So they do change people. Sounds painful. Ugh. Physical pain isn't a problem I mean, obviously it's a thing, but mental and emotional and spiritual pain is so much worse. And when these things were happening in 2018 and 2019, the dreams and everything started 2017, 2018, and then I was battered in 2019 in January for looking into all these things, for looking at all these things, and I had trauma to the head. And right before that, we had messed with some substances. You guys have heard my testimony. The dreams and everything started before any substance abuse issue, and that only happened for a very short time. It was a summer and a fall. And I do believe it opened my eyes up to certain things. I was able to see certain things. I don't think that's the effect on everybody, and I do not push drugs on anybody. They open up a gateway. They are definitely opening gateways, but they're opening gateways within you. When Christ says he knocks on a door, he's talking about an inner door in your heart, your spirit being. And when you do substances, you open up these doorways, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're not ready for it, or you think you're some highfalutin guru, things will go poorly for you, okay? But my testimony, all these things that happened, they happened before any of that happened and after that. It was not during, while I was, using. Well, I mean, some of it happened. You guys know my story. If you don't know my story, go back to the videos where we'll talk about it in another story, or another video. But, trauma can definitely create certain things, and I had a couple near-death experiences in the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019 because of trauma. And I was actually like, I got out of my body, I came out, and I was just kicked back into my body, like I was pushed back in. I don't even know how to explain it. But as this happened, it was only a second in real time. But as this happened, after I looked, I was pushed back in. And after this happened, I knew certain things. And there was one other time, there 2 times back to back. The one other time, I rose above my body. I saw my body, and I was like, this can't happen. I don't want my family to get in trouble or to find me like this. I got to get back in there. And so I did. I've been a lucid dreamer all my life, so things like that aren't hard for me. I know it's weird. I know it sounds strange. I know your first reaction might be to call me crazy, but that's okay. You just don't understand yet, but you will someday. Life arose immediately from the trauma, not as a random product of God's redemption, but as the primary process for realizing God's will. So they're saying through this trauma, God recognized, wait, I do have purpose, and it's all of you. And at the same time, recognizing that gave us our purpose. You see, that give and take, that yin and yang, that eternal 8, symbols by nature are not wicked, and they can be used in a variety of ways. Life is the means by which the manifestation of God's desire to live can be reproduced repeatedly. We, the nameless, the ignomen, are the first form of life to appear within this wound that is our universe. I don't know if this is angels or angels come next, but we'll continue. We are the reproducers of God's genome. We are God's will incarnate and the direct link between the Creator and its creation. Sounds like Christ. From us, all life has come, and through us, all life is joined in a very real and direct symbiosis. Okay, again, we have something else wanting to take credit, but are they doing it for some type of glory? Let's find out if they want something, what their motivation is in telling us this story. Maybe their motivation is just to help, but if somebody just wants to help you, they will just help you. They won't pick on you. They won't make videos degrading you. They will approach you in private and say, hey, I see you're having a hard time. This is why there is a process in the Bible, too, of proper correction. All these people making videos about each other, saying they're Christian, man, read the Bible. It says we're not supposed to do these things. We provide and we shouldn't. That's embarrassing. How's a person ever going to truly forgive you? And how are you going to, forgive yourself? And what's going to happen to you if you expose somebody like that? Especially if they're innocent. This is how I know that the things that happen, and let me, this is a good part to add this. I thought of this yesterday. This is how I know that certain things that have happened to me against my consent have been also against God's will for me. That's how I came to that realization. Hold, please. Sorry. That these things did things to me and in my life without my consent. And I believe that it's against God's will too. And how do I know that? Because I survived, because I lived. Or at least I lived in a manner of speaking. I don't think we ever die, or we don't have to. Can God kill a part of itself? Can God send a part of itself to an eternal hell? I don't know. We're told that, hell exists, and as a Catholic, I believe, we can definitely go to a hell, but I do think we have a lot to do with that we decide to be separated from God, that we decide and that comes from, and a lot of people are spreading this online, and people are falling for it, hook, line, and sinker, all these, this is a soul trap, and this place is a trap, and this is a trap, and this and that and the other. Man, we're supposed to be learning here, and all these things are just time wasters. So let me quit wasting your time. We have established the symbiotic relationship as the means of collecting the energy needed to fulfill the purpose of existence. We provide the energy for all life on the cellular level as the chloroplast and mitochondria in a plant and animal life, and in turn we harvest the refined product upon death. Okay, now this is where it gets weird. Diligently gathering and arranging these strings of existence, we lay the warp, draw the wolf. Okay, I think that's wool. We lay the and draw the wool upon the cosmic loom of time and space, mending the wound and healing God. Some of the forces that were unleashed into the vacuum created by abdication are, of course, the most powerful in the universe. So they're basically saying to cure God's boo-boo, to fix God's boo-boo, when a being dies, they're using that essence and putting it back on God like a band-aid, like a cure. Again, I'm not saying this is true, but let's continue. The most powerful in the universe, as stupendously destructive as these forces can be, they are also indispensable in the creation of life, for the healing of the wound. In fact, to solicit the spark of life from God's universal genome, we must combine it with nihilium, like a nihilist, nihilium, the obliterating matter of black holes. Funny how they call that nihilium, and if you look at nihilistic, what that definition is, it's funny that they're calling that black matter. They're calling the obliterating matter of black hole. Substance is the necrotic tissue of God, the black goo. This material that we collect from the edges of the wound is composed of massive but compact segments of the once perfect singularity of God's being. These sections are now lost forever to death and cannot be recovered. They must therefore be absorbed and replaced by new life, enormous amounts of which are needed to replace even the smallest pieces. Okay, so think of the black goo, right, in Venom, as it's overtaking its host's body. That's what it's saying is happening or could happen to God, and that to turn that black matter and to transmute it back into something that is of light, it takes a whole lot of energy. Maybe like an LHC would take? Interesting. This is why I go back to things, because as you learn, you can gain more information from books, from articles, links, whatever that you collected, or even your own journals that you wrote. You can see your growth, or you can say, hey man, I need to grow still. I've done that and said, wow, these last couple of years have been exactly the same. I need to change. So they must therefore be absorbed and replaced by new life, enormous amounts of which are needed to replace the smallest pieces. So they're saying a lot of light is needed to counterbalance the effects of the black goo. Hold, please. This is where I would disagree again. If the Bible is true and it means actual numbers of actual people, and it says 144,000, well, that they say are male Jews, allegedly, okay? So more than that will be saved. But I will say that there seems to be less light here now than darkness. This is why, like, when Christ came, he had so much light in him. He just his death was able to tear the veil, and I believe that his death actually, because he loved so much, all that love from him poured out and literally, quote unquote, covered all things. Let's remove the blood from it so that people who have a problem with that visualization maybe can look at it in a different way. We started to look for truth in a spoken language when we already... yeah, but I don't like that saying, though, that everyone has their own truth. That's not true. Everyone has a piece of the truth. Everyone has their own perspective of the truth. Everyone has their own life, which is a thread in the tapestry of life. But truth is truth, and it stands alone. I'm going to end this soon so I can continue in another video, but I'll read a little bit more. Oh, so basically, the black goo, they're saying that a lot more light is needed. Like, if you have, I don't know, like an inch by inch of the black goo, you would need like a foot by foot of light to counterbalance that, or to obliterate it and transmute it into something good so the light can absorb it, right? I would agree with that in terms of energy. Now, if you want to talk quantity, if you want to talk individuals who have light in them, say like me and you, right? The shining ones, those of us who do shine. If you take a few of us, 3 of us, right? The light from 3 of us would cover or be more than there would be darkness in 7 people. Probably, it's probably closer to like 10, 20, 100. A little bit of light goes a long way, is what I'm saying. So in quantity, you don't need that much. But they're talking from the spirit realm. And remember, everything's the opposite. One person probably carries a whole lot of light inside them. Imagine that light pouring out from one person like it did with Christ. Well, that one individual had a bunch of light in him that was counterbalanced to black goo, right? So if that, if that helps. I'm trying to give you guys a visualization here for it. But again, I believe it's the opposite here only because we're seeing from the material. So if you have 10 people on the primordial goo team and only one person on the team of light, the primordial goo team is going to lose against the prime light carrier, the one prime light carrier. Okay, that's actually a really neat concept. I might run with that. For God, whom we can only understand and refer to as the patient, the reproduction of life in all its possible forms represents the ultimate means of healing. Therefore, as the executors of the patient's will, we have been compelled to spread ourselves across the expanse of the wound in search of the necessary conditions where life may thrive. The recovery of the patient was excruciatingly slow at first. Life in the tempest of the wound is extremely difficult for us to inspire. Death had a huge head start in the race for survival, and life would have to struggle mightily to overcome its lead. Even in the exceedingly rare instances where a proper balance was struck for life to take hold, it could never last long enough to be of any real value beyond the maintenance of the most basic life support for the patient. Over billions of years, the patient lay comatose and critical as we continued searching with a single-minded desperation for a place where the will of the patient could be reconciled with the consequences of its actions, a place where life can be fostered and the healing can begin. All of this changed, however, with our discovery of this planet you have called Earth. We knew immediately that this planet was unlike anything that had come before. Even though we could not foresee the place it would eventually take as the center of the universe, the will of the patient demanded that all of our attention be focused there from the onset. So unique and so magnificent was this tiny planet and the healing possibilities it represented that we came to know it as hope, since it was the first time any such thing had appeared within the wound. We proceeded cautiously. There were still many risks to consider. The collection, preparation, and delivery of the volatile materials needed to grow life required a lot of energy. Radioactive energy, light energy. Energy that we and the patient had precious little to spare after billions of years of searching in vain for a healing space. As it turned out, however, hope was exactly what was needed. Hold, please. Was that the name of the planet in Star Wars? I don't remember. But there was one in, like, Sky Kingdom or wherever it was. Cloud Planet, Cloud Kingdom. Yeah. I could have swore Hope was, like, where Princess Leia came from or something. I hope they didn't plagiarize. Anyways, I would love to read more stories on the channel, and I will just stick to the books if you don't like the commentary. But I do still have to add a little at the beginning or end, just for... I did not interrupt the live stream. Mission accomplished. Nope, you didn't. Everything was good. On this end anyways. So thank you guys for being here. I'm going to end it there because it's a hopeful note. We will continue reading this story probably in the next live stream. Sorry if I had my finger over the speaker there. So we'll continue this video in the next live stream. It's a good place to stop, is with some hope. I'm not saying you should accept or receive this book story as being true. I'm saying it helps to look at things from a different perspective, and if we are to have a relationship with our Creator, you're welcome. If we are to have a more please, yes. If we are to have a relationship with our Creator, shouldn't this be done beginning with empathy? Should we not try to put ourselves in God's shoes? Not saying we are God, mind you, but just maybe looking at ourselves from the outside and saying, perhaps we could be more grateful today. Perhaps I could be kinder with my words today. Right? And this has nothing to do with, I don't want to hear about wives submitting to their husbands or submitting to abuse. I'm not pushing any of that or anything like that, or saying to go against your free will. I'm just saying maybe be inspired to be a little bit kinder on your own. And if you're going to have a relationship with the one who made you, then have that relationship. Put yourself in their shoes and try to figure out maybe how they feel. I think if we can do that, we can collectively change. And I will say I don't agree with part of this. I don't think darkness itself ever wins. It might exist. There might be battles that it comes out, seemingly a winner. But just being of the darkness itself is not a win. So I would not consider it a win. But I know that the physical darkness, nighttime is needed. I know I enjoy the night times. I like the moon and the stars and all the things the Creator made. So when thinking of these things, a sense of balance is definitely needed, right? You as well, Al. Great to see you. I hope you're well. We all need a sense of balance, right? And, again, I know there are people who mock and scoff, and at this point I feel like my whole life is some big joke or mockery. And I know something is going on more than I'm consciously aware of, and I hope that the only reason people are keeping it from me is for my own good. But I'm here to tell you that I don't seek to harm anybody. I don't seek to have revenge. But truth is freeing, and that I do ask for. Because there are people out there who know what's going on in my life more than I do. Does that seem right or just? I know it was not God's will for me, some of this, and I know they came against God's plan and against consent because I am still alive. God would have killed me or removed me from the playing board one way or another, put me wherever at this point, if you were supposed to do what you all did. You know who you are. It might do you well to start turning around and saying, okay, how can I make this better? Somebody told me the other day that well, that's the Catholic in me thinking I have to do good deeds to balance out my bad. No, that's just something I inherently know in my heart, that I need to do more good in the world. It's just something I know. And I know that there are scales of justice. Again, it's just something I know. And why is justice blind? Because God is not a respecter of persons. He doesn't care how much money you have. He doesn't care what kind of person you are. They just don't care. They just don't care. And I know that our neighbors are involved in some of what's happening. But understand, if you look from that wicked perspective, all you're going to do is get stuck in the ditch of sin and transgression. I pray for my neighbors because I love them, and I do love them. And I love humans. I don't like everybody very much right now because of the things that have happened to me. But I love you all, and I pray for you all, even my enemies. So we're going to finish up this story in the next live stream. I hope you'll join me. I really enjoy the story because it helps me to recognize that maybe I'm not seeing the entire picture. I have blind spots like everybody else. We each have one. And we need to be put in somebody else's shoes to see our own blind spots because we can't see them from our eyes. And yes, to have a relationship with God, you have to know God. And to know, how do you know God? Well, you put yourself in God's position a little bit. Yes, I agree with that. That's why Christ said that. If you deny him, if you deny me, you deny him. It's the same with all of us who are Christ followers. If you deny me, you deny Christ. If you deny me, you deny my Father. Because I am here in front of you, that is proof that somebody made me. So if you deny me, that God made me, well, you're denying God and you're denying me. It goes along with the verse talking about those who look, the only fool is the one who looks around him and says there is no God. Because all you got to do is look around. If this was hell, if this was a hell realm, there would not be any good here. There would not be babies. There would not be frogs. There would not be rainbows. There would not be even the thought of a unicorn. And I know some of these are images for pedos now. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to look at everything from the darkened eye and everything is wicked. Unicorns are beautiful. They were talked about in the Bible. I'm not going to make them a wicked thing. I'm not going to make pizza a wicked thing, although I know what the symbol means, so I don't use it, obviously. But I'm not going to stop eating pizza because somebody else makes it a bad thing. Man, that's their jive. That's their jam. If that's what they want to do, and it's not as thou wilt. God himself gave us free will to make these decisions. So it's a healthy sense of balance. And knowing that not everyone is going to have the whole truth. And another person is very rarely going to know the will of God for you. You have to go inward for that. Don't go to, that's why you're not supposed to go to a psychic. And prophets, they come to you if they have a message for you from God. And sometimes you can ask them and they might have some insight as a person of God, right? But there's a difference in these things. And it's not much. The difference is intent, guys. The difference is the hierarchy in their mind. I place Christ at the hierarchy. He is my anchor. My anchor is above me instead of below me. Do you see why things are kind of inverted here? That doesn't mean everything's wicked. It just means we see things in the opposite manner God sees them, because he's on the other side of the mirror, man. So again, we have to be very careful about the words that we use. Darkness doesn't always mean wickedness, and wickedness doesn't always connotate darkness, though they do their wicked deeds in the dark, right? That's why darkness got a bad name, bad rap, is because evil likes to hide in the darkness. That's all. That's all. All right, and end this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we'll talk more again soon, even if you're not a Christ follower, not a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Buddhist, if you're what else is there? I don't know. I'm not really well read. I don't care who you are. Just you're welcome here as long as we are kind, right? As long as we are open and respectful to each other. And I hope you are open enough to put yourself in the place of your Creator this day, just so you remember simply to say, thank you. I am grateful for the experience and just for being here. Thank you for being here with me.